Welcome back to another episode of 100 Ways to Make 100K, the show where we're on the hunt to find 100 different ways to make 100 grand a month. I'm your host, Javon.ca, and on this episode, I can't wait to introduce you to a very special realtor, broker, and investor that goes by the name of Mithuran Manogaran. Now, in this episode, he introduces us to a very unique concept that one of his mentors taught him around health, wealth, and time. And I can't wait for you to hear this episode. This is a conversation you're not going to want to miss. Ladies and gentlemen, Mithuran Manogaran.
So my name is Mithuran Manogaran. I'm currently the Vice President of Business Development at Bay Street Group, and I'm also the founder and CEO of Hillside Realty. Just a bit about myself. I've been in the real estate space for the last 5 years now, and I started off as a realtor while working a job while also being a violinist. And then after my first year, did pretty well for myself, so I decided to quit my job and jump into real estate full time. Fast forward, last year I had my first 7-figure year, which was huge for us. And now this year I'm managing a team of over 10 agents right now, and we have multiple full-time staff as well too. So, and we help clients across the GTA and Durham region as well.
That's cool. I'm really excited to dive in.
Yeah,
so
man.
you mentioned violinist.
Yes.
Was that the job before, or was that kind of like the side hustle?
It's hard to say where exactly it lies. I guess it's a job and side hustle, but yeah, so I've been playing the violin since I was 8 years old. I started publicly performing since I was 15. So a good chunk of my income at that time was generated from violin. Interesting fact, I actually managed to pay off my tuition fees with what I made in violin as well too, and walk out debt free out of university.
So who do you play the violin for exactly?
Yeah, so I actually am classically trained in violin. It's a specific art form called Carnatic music, so it's based out of South India. A lot of children from South Asian backgrounds in Toronto, they are learning this art form. So my brother is actually a drummer. I learned the violin, and it's a big part of my life. And we perform a lot for events, whether it be like private performances, weddings, and it's a very word of mouth business. So I'd say, like, after a few years into it, I just started getting noticed. People started calling me, and kind of just really cycled in and doing really pretty well.
So this was at 15 that you started?
At 15, man. My first concert, I went to Baltimore on my own. It was pretty scary because I had to go on the bus and like do all that traveling on my own. But yeah, that was my first time performing, and then from there, I never looked back.
Wow. So how do you even get into an opportunity where you're going to Baltimore from Toronto to play the violin? Like
that specific opportunity, I was actually replacing someone.
Okay.
And I would say the main thing is just to, having a reputation for being able to play well. I think that's really important. That's usually what gets you through the door first in the music scene. It's just capabilities and also who you know as well too. So I was very fortunate to have someone recommend me, and then that was my first opportunity. And fortunately, I played well. Or I think I do. So people keep calling me back. So I'm doing all right.
And do you still play the violin to this day?
I do, man. I do. A lot of people actually don't know that about me. So it's funny, if you check out my Instagram, I have a real estate Instagram and I have my personal Instagram. Kind of live dual lives, one on day and one at night. But it's pretty cool because I'm in real estate, and as an entrepreneur, I'm able to manage my schedule, and I've gotten really good in the last 2 years at that. So especially in the summers, I see a huge increase in performances, and that's something I do for my pure joy and satisfaction. So I'm able to balance both, which is amazing.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So what was the job at the time? So you mentioned before getting into real estate, you had this full-time job.
That's right.
Full-time violin, full-time student. I mean, walk us through that time.
Yeah. So interesting story about me. I'll give a quick synopsis. So while I was at UFT, so that's where I did my BBA, I was in international business.
Okay.
My first co-op, I was at Microsoft Canada. They hired me, and that went really well. From there, I went to Procter & Gamble. So I was in the consumer goods industry, and then from there, I got headhunted to Unilever, where I was a sales consultant. So that was my last corporate job. I was there for 2 years and change. And then once again, it did really well for me. Interesting fact, I've sold all sorts of things. I actually even sold tampons at one point when I was at Procter & Gamble. Yeah, I know a lot more about tampons than most dudes do. I don't know if that's fortunate or unfortunate, but so I sold all sorts of things. I did toothpaste, I did Tide soap, I did Q-tips, I did ice cream. In the end, I was selling deodorant to Shoppers Drug Mart. And then real estate did really well. And I think the one thing that made me want to pivot into becoming an entrepreneur was there was this one particular gentleman who was a manager at the company I worked at, and I said, you know what, John, like, you live the life, man. Like, you make like 300K, you're a manager, like everyone wants to be you in the company. Like, I was on that company Kool-Aid. And he said, really? Because I'm 45 and I've just been selling different types of soap for 20 years. And I'm like, damn, like that hits deep. He's like, because I thought about it. I'm like, what kid grows up saying I want to sell soap for a living?
Yeah.
Right. So that kind of sparked me. And then how the success of real estate started building up for me, that kind of made it easy for me to pivot into something full-time in real estate. And now I do real estate and violin.
So how did this guy who sold soap influence you? You know, when I hear that doesn't sound like the ideal life for me, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think when I looked at him, he was the prime example of golden handcuffs. And I think he was the one who opened the eyes for me, because I think the 2 years I was there, I look up at him and I'm like, man, you win all the awards. Like, you're always like a top salesperson. Like, you crush your targets. And then for him to look at me and say, do I really live the life? Kind of opened my eyes. Because I could see that there was a lack of satisfaction and a lack of fulfillment from what he was doing.
Now, did he say that, or did you just read that?
I read through him.
Yeah.
I really read through him. And I think one other thing he shared with me, and it's something that still changes my life till today, is there's 3 important things in life. So it's time, health, and money. And they say that when you're young, you have time and health, but no money. Then when you're an adult in your 40s or your 30s, you have money and health, but no time. And then when you're old, you have time and money, but no health. And he's like, most humans never have all 3 at once. And I think once he said that hit me really deep, because at that time, I could really relate to that. And I'm not going to say that when I even started on real estate that I had all 3 at once, but definitely when you learn to scale your business and bring in the right players into your business, you could definitely have all 3 at once as an entrepreneur.
Wow. So I'm guessing between violin and P&G, this was probably your first 100 grand in a year.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what was your relationship with real estate at the time? So you're probably seeing this guy, what was his name again?
John.
You're seeing John.
Yeah.
Shout out John.
Yeah.
Maybe he might watch this. He might be like, Mithuran's on our podcast.
I hope he watches it, man. I hope he watches it. I hope he's doing well.
We'll send it to him on LinkedIn or something
we'll find him.
But what was your relationship with real estate at the time? Yep. And what was your relationship with your workload? Because you're working all the time, I'm assuming, full-time job, a part-time violin.
Yep.
What was your thoughts around your relationship with time in this particular junction?
So you're asking me what, like, my relationship with real estate and kind of managing all that time and all that at that
First time, and then kind of how it led you to real estate.
Yeah. So at that point, I had no time for myself. I was actually in the worst physical health I was probably in my entire life. So I was like 21, 22 at the time. When they tell you it's a 9 to 5, it's never really a 9 to 5. Like, you're working like 8 to 8. And then whatever little time I had outside of there, I was either teaching violin, going to rehearsals, I was practicing, performing. So you could imagine, like, I was performing or working nonstop, right? And it got pretty bad. But once again, I think what happens is you get into this trap and this Kool-Aid, and you believe that that's what's normal and that's what I got to do to make ends meet or make money or whatever. I think what also happens is when other people in society look at you, they look at you and they're like, oh, wow, like, you have the dream job, like, you live the dream life, or you're performing. So you kind of look at yourself and tell yourself, this is normal. Actually, this is what everyone else wants. So I should be happy to be in this situation. I'm not saying you shouldn't be happy, but it's the lifestyle choice. And at that time, man, I had no time for myself. Like, I remember, like, I could barely, like, bend over and touch my toes at the time. I was out of shape. I would run 100 meters and be gassed, right? And I think, you know, once all of that started hitting, I started saying, okay, you know what? I got to be more efficient with my time. And I think one thing that also hit me was when you work for someone else, you're ultimately selling or working towards their dream, not your own, right? And I think once all of that started kicking, I started understanding my relationship with time was that I had no time for me. I had no time to achieve what I wanted. And I think the biggest thing is you get so comfortable. And that's what society teaches you to do. They teach you to be comfortable. They teach you to do what's conventional. And taking that leap, especially at a young age, coming from a conventional family, like a typical South Asian family, not risk-taking, super risk-adverse, it was a huge jump, right? Particular to real estate, my relationship then was, you know, we were like, my family, we were investing. You'll see that with a lot of South Asian families, they're very big on real estate, because even back home, whether it's Sri Lanka or India or any other South Asian country, usually the largest wealth increases through real estate acquisition, especially land. So you'll see that a lot of South Asian families always have interest. If not, they buy gold. Like, it's very uncommon to see a South Asian dad be like, yeah, I'm going to buy 3 Bitcoins today. Like, you're probably not going to see that. It's very unconventional, right? So it was always there. And then I think what kind of wanted me to get more into real estate on the selling side was I felt that there was a lack of knowledge and good, deep understanding in this industry within our community, and just generally I felt. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do this for me, and I'll get my license and buy for myself. And then 5 years later.
Yeah. So it was probably even before getting into real estate, it was probably tough, like, stomaching the fact that you were actually working for someone else. You had no time. you probably didn't even have the amount of money that you wanted.
Yep.
What were some of your first moves during that point? Was it straight to real estate? Were you spinning around for a little while? Because I know a lot of people usually feel that discontent.
Yep.
And they don't know where to go.
Yep.
So I'm curious, like, what was it that actually led you to real estate? Was it just seeing the big land transfer, or sorry, the wealth transfer back home? Or was there like a book? Was it a conversation with somebody that shifted your perspective?
Yeah, I think it was accumulation of things for me. I'll just talk about like the dissatisfaction. And I think what started happening to me was like when I was going in and selling in like deodorant sticks and like toothpaste, I'm just like, I had no motivation. And I quickly realized because I'm not passionate about it. Like, I just didn't care enough about toothpaste.
I mean, dude, it's tough to be passionate about deodorant. You know?
Right? And I'm sure there's people out there who are, but it just wasn't for me. Right? But I think the thing is, and you know, if anyone watches this, I hope this inspires them, is you have to come to that realization. Like you just have to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I'm okay to admit that this isn't for me. And it's tough, man, because when you're 23, 24 and you're making over 100K, and you know, you get free ice cream in the office, free coffee, free food, they pay for your car, they pay for your cell phone. You're like, I'd be an idiot to leave this. Yeah. Be the idiot to leave it.
And it was probably not easy saying that to your parents either.
No.
Because they were probably so happy you graduated school.
I took the severance package and then told them.
Yeah.
I don't advise that. But I mean, you know what? It is what it is, right? And what happens is you learn to bet on yourself, right? Shout out to Fred VanVleet, but you do learn to bet on yourself. And I think that is the most important thing when you take that leap of faith. You want to make your first 100K, 200K, $1 million, you got to learn to bet on yourself.
So what was the first bet that you made?
Funny enough, my first major investment that actually lost me a lot of money and made me a lot of money. So I was walking around the office one day and everyone was talking about weed stocks. So I went to Scotiabank and I opened up an iTrade account and I had 10K and I went and dumped it into a stock. Actually, sorry, I had 20K. All right. So I dumped it into a stock, knew nothing about stocks. And I remember I was like ripping my head out because I paid $9.99 for like the trading fee. And I'm like, whoa, I just lost $10. Yeah. Right. Because you're trying to save on every dollar. The next morning I wake up and the stock goes from like 40 cents to 30 cents or something. And like, I'm like, crap, my 20 grand went to 15 grand. Me being the idiot I am, I sold it.
So so you spent all 20 on.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I jump 3 feet deep on everything, man.
Okay.
Don't recommend it, but I do. So I lost 5K, and I'm like, man, this is bad, right? But then, funny enough, I went back and bought that stock again because someone was like, you only lose when you sell, right? So I'm like, crap. So I went back and dumped that 15K in. Fortunately, it actually went up to like 110K for me. Once weed stocks popped off.
Wow, good thing you spent the $10 on the additional fee, you know?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I'm still ripping my head out about it, but it is what it is. But no, like, I mean, like, it was not the typical first investment you make. But at that time, I remember like, I was like, all right, let me give this a shot. Let me just see what happens. And it worked out. That was my first one. In terms of real estate, I didn't segue into real estate right away. I was very focused on increasing my active income, especially in the violin side at that time. Obviously, with your job, you're very limited. You get your standard 5%, 6% increases. But with violin, I was really focused on scaling my school, on performing a lot more. And that did do very well for me.
Scaling your school?
Yeah, so I used to teach. I used to teach as well too.
Okay.
At one point, I had over 80 students. And then once real estate picked up, I had to put my energy into real estate because it just required me to work 25 hours a day.
So what was the most you think you ever made in violin? I guess in, let's say, a year. What was it in a month? What do you think your record month in violin was?
I think in my peak, man, I was doing a solid like 130, 140K.
Holy smokes, dude.
Because I was performing a lot. So the classes are cash flow.
Okay.
Right. So that's like your monthly cash flow, but the performances are lump sum of money. So I was doing about 40 to 50 performances when I was getting paid in the 4-figure range. So,
and this was all from referrals?
Oh yeah.
Dude, you were nice. You must have been nice at the violin.
I'm all right.
You're sick, eh?
I'm all right. I'm all right. I'm all right.
All right.
Someone will drop a comment about. I'm kidding. But no, I'm all right. I mean, like, it's a small community.
Okay.
Violin is one of the most delicate instruments too, because it's a string instrument, so it requires a lot of precision and practice. So given that there was a small amount of pool of players, like I definitely was able to gain a lot of opportunities from it. Very fortunate.
That's
very
really
fortunate.
Cool. Yeah. So violin is growing to like this massive amount. Why would you then not just go all in on violin? What made you want to still play in real estate? COVID for sure, right? Because in COVID, all the performances got shut down. So I saw that. I think one thing that COVID taught me is always have multiple streams of income, right? Like I know we were talking about this before as well too, but whether it's having cash flowing assets
or an active income or side hustle, like
Mm-hmm.
you don't know what could go belly up at any point,
Mhm.
right? I mean, even as someone who's a real estate professional, every day we hear rumors of like companies coming that are going to cut commissions and you could just buy your house with a robot.
Yeah.
Could happen, right? And you just got to be prepared for it. Like, what's plan B? What's plan C? And I think that's something that a lot of people don't do.
Yeah.
So with me, during COVID, I had a lot of time given back to me because now I'm not traveling to work. I'm sitting at home working. Everyone was half-assing work at that time too. So no one was working 8 hours in COVID. And then on top of that, there was no performances for me. So I was kind of just sitting home, and then real estate just picked up.
Now, were you already a realtor? Were you already investing?
Both. So I was both. I became a realtor in the end of 2019.
Okay.
And then COVID hit 4 months in.
Wow.
Funny story about me was on the real estate side was, it was interesting because on my Instagram, like I was positioned as like a violinist, and that was my brand. So I remember when I joined the brokerage and I was on a team, they would be like, "Hey, post content, like and I'm like, that's kind of weird. I don't want people to be like, yo, what the hell? Like, you're a violinist and now you're a realtor. Like, what the hell happened to you? Like, what is it? Your next get rich quick scheme kind of thing?" So my first 6 months, I actually worked with one client. We looked at probably every damn house in Durham, and she didn't end up buying.
Wow.
So I was like, and I remember my parents were like, real estate's tough. There's a lot of competition. It's not as easy as you think. I was on the bridge of giving up. I was ready to just call it a career. Fortunately, I had one of my friends. He's a mortgage agent.
Okay.
Reach out to me and he said, "Hey man, like I want to sell my house and move out to Oshawa." He was in Pickering. Shout out to that guy because he probably
give him a shout out, man.
Yeah, man. Shout out to Ramana because he's thank you, man. He was my first client and he gave me a shot. Right. Funny enough, I remember I went to his house in Pickering and him and his wife were like, "Should we start cleaning and like packing up?" And I'm like, think so. Like, I don't even know how to list your house. Like, I was confused, man. Like, I had no clue. I didn't know who to call to get on board. I had nothing. Fortunately, I was on a team, so they helped out.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, shout out to that guy. So that was my first deal. From there, he referred me, referral. And then I started getting into the investment side in Scarborough, which I'm sure you'll ask me about later. But at the end of that year, I ended up making more money in real estate than I did in my job. And that's what opened my eyes because that all happened in like 6 months.
Now, here's the thing though. You got the license before COVID.
Yeah.
So you must have been thinking something as you were in violin. Yeah. Right? Like what made you want to do that?
So I wanted to get my license because I'm like, all right, since I'm investing, I'll just buy my own properties for my family. Like I wasn't planning to do this full time.
Yeah.
If you asked me 5 years ago, I would have been like, no way in hell. Like there's no way I'm gonna be a realtor or like be in real estate or have my own team or whatever it is. Yeah. So I just wanted to get my license for fun. It was just 5 courses. It didn't seem too difficult. Was going through the process. I took my time with it. I think I did it over a year. And then, even when I started in real estate, funny enough, the first brokerage I joined was actually, it's owned by a couple whose daughters are learning violin from me. So they're like, "Hey, we own a brokerage. Why don't you join us?" And I'm like, whatever. It doesn't matter where I join because I'm just doing this like for myself. Yeah. So it was something that kind of came into fruition as I kind of got into the field and things started really, really picking up.
So what was the first property that you ever bought? Maybe you could walk us through that deal, you know, because I'm sure that changed. I remember the first time I bought one, man, it changed my perspective and my relationship with time and money forever.
Yeah. I'll talk about the first one I bought as a realtor. I think that's a good one.
All right.
The first one I bought as a realtor was in 2020.
Okay.
Oh my God, I lost track of years, man.
Wow.
And I'll talk about why I think it's a good one. Ended up picking that up from an elderly gentleman he was retired, worked at Hydro One, and he was retiring after 50 years. Lived in that home its full 50 years, bought it brand new. It was a Scarborough bungalow in the golf club in Ellesmere area. I picked it up in the mid 700s, rented the basement. And I remember I was able to refi all my cash out at that time. Interest rates are great, values are great, properties are appreciating. I took that money and obviously kept on multiplying. But why that was really cool was I remember my contractor came in and he's like, like why this property? Like, why don't you go buy like something else? And I said, well, I want to focus on investments or being an investment realtor. I want to sell Scarborough, and I got to put my money where my mouth is. And he laughed at me. He's like, that's the dumbest thing I heard. He's like, who's gonna look at this house and like whatever? So I remember everyone that came into my house, friends, clients, the guy who did my blinds, the guy who did my doors, the guy who did my windows, the guy who did my floors. I tell them, here's a strategy. Here's what I'm doing. Here's why it makes sense. Funny enough, my clients bought 4 other properties on that same street. Right.
Okay.
And I'm a huge believer that don't sell me something unless you will buy into the product or you bought into it. Like, don't sell me a Beamer if you're driving a Benz.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I want to see you drive a Benz first.
100%.
Right? Or like, if you're selling me the Beamer, drive a Beamer first.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that was a huge eye opener for me. And funny enough, the guys who even did my blinds for me, they ended up doing like 3 transactions with me. Right? Because I pitched them on the story, and they were from Vaughan, so they weren't even thinking of Scarborough or anything.
Yeah.
Right?
They don't go east to the DVP.
Yeah. So that one, I think I picked it up for $750 if I'm not right.
Okay.
There's been a lot of property since then, but $750. I've re-rented it. My tenants actually left, so I re-rented. The upstairs is renting for $3,100 and the downstairs for $2,500.
Wow.
So we're seeing a $5,600. They split the utilities 60-40.
Crazy.
So for me right now, I am on variable for that particular property, which has me at about, I think if I'm not wrong, about $3,000. Property tax, insurance, I'm sitting about $3,400. So I'm still cash flowing a pretty good amount. I'd say about $2,200 a month.
Yeah,
Can't complain.
It's not bad. And you probably got a couple other base hits like that as well, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All in Scarborough?
I'm purely in Scarborough.
Why Scarborough? Why do you believe so much in this place? Yeah?
Why do I believe in Scarborough? So
yeah,
I believe in Toronto. I'll start there.
Okay.
I believe in Toronto a lot. I think that, we're going to have a scarcity if we already don't. Already Toronto's unaffordable, but I do believe it should get worse. Do I want it to? No, from a pricing perspective. And I'm just going to say that a lot of people think realtors want prices to go up. We actually don't, because when prices are too high, our buyers can't buy. So that's such a huge misconception out there. But why Toronto?
Yeah.
What I believe is that we're going to be, us and maybe the generation after us, maybe the last ones who could actually be able to somewhat buy in Toronto. I think what's going to happen after a certain point is you're going to see a lot of these properties become inheritance properties, and a lot of the newer generation kids are going to have to move out, live in rural parts of Ontario, or like, places like Newcastle. Then you'll see them kind of go to Belleville or Trenton at some point.
Calgary.
And it's going to happen. Calgary. It's already happening.
Yeah.
Right? So my ideology was, let me buy up as much of Toronto as I can. Especially these bungalows. They're sitting on generous lots as well too. So I'm sitting on a lot of land.
Yeah.
Now, why did I double click into Scarborough? Number one, I live in Scarborough.
Okay.
So as an investor, I see a lot of people who, buy in territorial markets, and that's great. The strategy works well. The math is there. The money's there. Yes, you can have systems. You can have VAs. You can have PAs. I don't even know what they have today, but you could do all these things. But for me, I love the fact that every single one of my investment properties are 15 minutes away from me. I want to see what I own.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, especially in real estate, like, I want to see what I own. I want to drive by it and be able to see it if I want to. I think that was one. I think number two is when I look at, when you're benchmarking Scarborough, I'm not going to compare Scarborough to Windsor. It doesn't make sense. It's not an apple to apple comparison.
Yeah.
But I am going to look at Scarborough versus Etobicoke, or Scarborough versus North York. And when you kind of benchmark Scarborough to those other parts of the GTA that are outside of the core, like downtown core, Scarborough's the cheapest. Right? And my theory is because Scarborough is the one that developed later compared to those communities.
Okay.
You see a lot of immigrants that kind of started moving in the 90s, early 2000s, and really built up this community. I think one of the things that's going to be really lucrative in Scarborough is the rebuild opportunity, rebuilding homes here. Okay. You go into North York, you go into like Alderwoods, Etobicoke, you're already seeing a lot more rebuilds. Yeah. Scarborough's starting to get there, but you'll still find a lot of pockets. And I think we're still in a rhythm where it's like 1 in every like 20 homes is rebuilt right now. Don't quote me on that, but like maybe 20, 25. Some areas are more concentrated. And you want to kind of buy in those pockets where you think there's going to be more rebuilds happening. So for example, like Gilwood, where we're sitting right now, it's a great area to own a good piece of land because people are going to keep rebuilding here
over and over. And everything new is crazy dense. In comparison to the land, like the land that we're sitting on now, they'd probably put like 8 different townhomes if you were to buy this today.
Absolutely.
Right, with no backyards and friggin' condo fees.
And no, it's true, man. And like I think the one thing is like, you're seeing changes with regulations and zoning as well. Now you could take this duplex bungalow and make it into a fourplex, add a garden suite in the backyard, and now you got 5 different tenants in there paying you a lot of cash. Right. So you're going to continue to see the density go up, like you said. But I think what it's going to be, why I like Toronto and Scarborough especially, is because Scarborough is the most undervalued in Toronto. And number 2, because Toronto is going to become more and more unaffordable. So if you can, buy in Toronto.
Wow. So when did real estate, as not the investing side, but more so the active business side? Because you mentioned earlier, the active business is something that's really core to you. Maybe you could share some of your beliefs on active versus passive.
I'll talk about that for sure.
So
I think passive income is so important, right? Like you want to have passive income. One thing I will tell you is nothing is passive. And that's why I'm very careful when I use the word passive. It could be owning real estate. It could be private lending. It could be, I don't know what else, even investing in another business. There's still some element to it that's active. It's just how active are you? That's where you kind of have to measure yourself. But to say like I'm passively making $5,000 a month off this apartment building is BS. Right? Like you'd be lying. Right? Nothing is passive in life unless you're inheriting money. Right? So my belief is passive income is great, but after a certain point, it becomes very active. You could be a flipper, you could be a cash flow specialist, you could, like I said, you could be a private lender. It becomes active at a certain point, or it becomes more active at a certain point. Because what happens is you're going to be like, all right, this makes me a lot of money. I'm going to drop my job or whatever I'm doing and double down into this. It becomes active.
100%.
I don't know if this is a popular opinion on social media or not, but I do think the richest people in the world are the ones with the highest active incomes, right? And me and you, we were talking about it, but like, you know, we sit courtside for the Raptors and I go to a lot of the games, and when I talk to anyone there, no one comes to me and says, oh yeah, I make like $300,000 a month off cash flowing assets. Like, I mean, that'd be cool, but a lot of people don't reach that scale, or they tap out, or they just get, you know, they start to stagnate. Or B, it just becomes way too active, or they segment into other things. Like it's just not common. So I think one thing that I would say for sure is you got to focus on that active income, right? Because nothing is truly passive. I think that's a huge misconception out there.
So when you decided to lock in on the real estate side of the business, what were some of your first moves? Because I remember your first deal, you didn't even know what to do. Right? You're probably super confused. You were going around for 6 months with this person looking at every house in Durham. It didn't sell. You know, and then all of a sudden one of your referral partners ends up using you. Right. But now I think you hit a record last year in commissions. You know, not only for your age, but like one of your own PRs. Congrats, by the way.
Thanks, man.
That didn't happen by accident.
No.
Right. So what changed from the Mithuran that sold a property accidentally to selling properties intentionally?
That's a great question, man. There's a lot of ways to answer that. I think two things I would say. Number one is consistency, right? Like you got to wake up every day and want it. And especially like the market we're in right now, I tell my agents all the time, this is the year where you're going to make half the money working double the time. But you just got to be consistent. You got to be okay with rejection. And consistency also, what I want to add on to that is being consistent and being uncomfortable. Put yourself out in places where you're not exposed to, right? You know, when I was trying to build my network, it wasn't just, okay, let me talk to my family and friends. You gotta go and find those clients who want to work with you. You got to go find those big fish who will give you a chance. And there's gonna be a lot of rejection along the way, but you got to be okay with it, right? If you had asked me 5 years ago at 28, would I have my own team and hit all these numbers and have Hillside Realty and all that? No way, right? People have dreams, but it's like, what are the actions you're taking to get there? The actions is the harder part, right? Dreaming is easy, but the part with the actions is you have to fall in love with that. You have to fall in love with rejection. You have to fall in love with going there and just trying your best, right? And I think the second thing I just say is, especially on the realtor side, is do the simple things right. A lot of people don't do the simple things right. I get so many calls with clients who worked with other professionals and they were just not educated on what's going on. Like they just were not properly educated on. So build systems. Because what's going to happen is you're going to hit a point where you work with so much people, you can't sit there explaining everything to everyone for hours. So build systems, automations, have files in place, have documents in place, have automated emails in place, make the process easy, record videos of you talking to your clients. That's actually something we're working on right now. So for our clients in pre-construction, we're building out videos and systems for them so that they can watch us explain things before they even contact us to purchase, right? So how are you making things easier? And I think the thing with a lot of entrepreneurs is we're like chickens with their heads cut off, right? Exactly.
Scrambled eggs.
And if you want to go from 50K to 100, that's easy. You can just grind it out. You want to go to 100 to 200, you can grind it out too. But to go from like 250 to $500,000 then to $1 million and more, you got to build systems. There's no other way, man.
So what were those? I'll share an interesting story that I heard, I think it was 2019, about those numbers that you said as well, about specifically the 50 to 100, the 200 to 50, the 500, the 1 mil. Remind me to share it shortly. But I'm curious, you said people aren't doing the simple things right, the fundamentals right. What are those fundamentals in your perspective?
So I think it's, I mean, if you want like specific to real estate.
Why not? I mean, listen, at the end of the day, like business is the same shit, different toilet.
That's right.
Right. So
That's
it
right.
really just depends on how you look at your own machine that you're in. Yours just happens to be real estate.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what the fundamentals are. And I mean, it's up to the viewers to apply it to their own machine accordingly.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to hear some of the data and the information that you look at and that you would describe as your fundamentals.
Forget data, man. What people forget is there's a whole emotional side
Okay.
to life, right? Number one thing I tell people is people want to work with a nice person. Like they just want to work with a nice guy. I've had people come to me so many times, they're like, yo, you're just a nice guy. Like I trust you. Like here you go. Like tell me what to do. Start with that. I think the one thing I see a lot of is I see a lot of entrepreneurs, realtors, whatever it is, make a little bit of money, become a douchebag, right? I know everything. I'm a jack of all trades.
Yeah.
And that's okay. You very well could be, but it's the way you position yourself, right? You know, like something as simple as like, I get asked every day, where are rates going? Oh, it's going to go down for sure. Oh, trust me. I talked to someone in BMO. It's going to go like, no, you don't know that, right? Don't put yourself in that position, right? When I sell real estate, I never ever tell my client what to do. You give them the facts, you show them the properties, or you take them to the listings, like whatever it is, right? And then you let them choose. The amount of times I've seen ads and realtors say this is the best investment, you don't know that.
Yeah.
You don't know that.
Yeah.
To be honest, we'll only know if it's the best investment after the fact, right? Or when you look back and look at the data or the increase in appreciation or whatever it is. Like things like that, I'm very sensitive about. You'll never hear me be like, yo, man, this is the best investment. I would put everything into it. Like, you don't do that. It's the simple things, right? And I know this sounds very basic, but the amount of people who don't do it superiorly exceeds the amount of people who do it, right? I'll give you another simple thing. Like one of our biggest principles at Hillside is transparency.
Okay.
Be transparent with your client. The amount of times when my agents or we go into showings and they might ask you something you don't know, it's okay to say you don't know. Just be like, hey, you know what, man? I don't know the answer, but I could follow up with you once I'm home, get the answer for you. It's okay. Don't misguide. And the reality is your clients have already done their research about a lot of things before they even talk to you. Yeah. So they're going to sniff your BS pretty quick. Right. So transparency is a huge principle. Right. And the last one that I really live by is like, you know, you touched on it, data driven, all of that. I think one of the things, especially in real estate, is a lot of realtors don't go at a ground level and learn real estate. I tell this to realtors all the time. When you're a new realtor, who cares if you don't have a client? Book 5 showings and go look at 5 homes. Go study homes. Look at the windows. Look at the floors. Look at the finishes. Look at the layouts. Right? That's how you educate yourself. When I got into Scarborough duplexing and started teaching clients on all of this, I would spend hours with my rental guys while they're doing work because I want to learn everything from like plumbing to framing to electrical. And don't get me wrong, I'm still learning. There's a lot to learn. But the more you got to be that sponge. And I think the thing is you got to always be a sponge. Right? The moment you say I'm no longer a sponge, that's when you lose. And I think that's just an entrepreneurial mindset. Yeah. That really is.
Yeah. And then one of the things that you mentioned that I think was really particular was the network.
Yep.
You know, you said at first, like the people that I was around couldn't really buy these homes. Yep. And it seemed like you were deliberate in changing some of the people that you're around. I'm curious about some of the ways that you've done that. And like over time, right? Because it's one thing, like to be around certain people, it's one thing to do things with people, but to be continuously evolving and putting yourself in rooms where you can be a sponge.
That's right.
Because a lot of people that I come across, they end up in these rooms where they're the expert over and over and over and over again. Right. You know, I heard something about spend a third of your time with people that you can educate, spend a third of your time with people that are, you know, in similar arenas to you, and then spend a third of your time with people that are above you in whatever regard. Right. You know, I'm curious what you've done to put yourself in different rooms, to put yourself around different types of people.
Just gotta put yourself out there, man. And I'll double click into that. But no, that's especially as a realtor, and I'll just address that particularly if there's other realtors watching. Yeah. A lot of time when you start with family and friends, they're hesitant. They might ask you for cashbacks, or are you gonna buy them a new TV, new fridge, all sorts of things. I don't know what people do these days or ask for these days. Excuse me. Yeah. But I can tell you from my experience, like no one really wanted to give me a shot. They were a little nervous. I'll never forget 2 of my best friends. One guy calls me one week, like, and I just started. I was struggling with that one client. He calls me like, "Hey man, like, you know, my fiance and I, we bought a house, and we're moving in." Cool. All right. My other best friend calls and says, hey man, we bought a house with my parents. And I'm like, I'm gonna remember this.
Yeah.
Like, and like not, and I didn't take it. So we're still best friends.
Yeah,
I have
yeah.
no issues. And even like now today, like I still tell them to work with someone else because I don't want that to affect our friendship or anything in any way. But that's when it hit me. I'm like, I gotta go find people to work with. You know, like if you're just gonna sit there and think your friends and family are gonna call you, they're not. They're really not. So what did I start doing? I mean, you got to tailor it to what you're the I guess the area you're in, or the income levels, or the type of people you see buying in the areas you're in.
Yeah.
One of the things I started doing was I started really getting uncomfortable and putting myself in networking events where there's people in that higher income looking to be in the Scarborough, downtown Toronto area. You got to put yourself out there. I think one thing that worked really well for me was like with the Raptors. So having courtside seats there. I remember they did a Giants of Africa event, $2,000 ticket to get in. But I said, you know what? I'm going to pay that $2,000. I'm going to get there and get me some networks, right? And getting in there was the best thing. Met a lot of players, a lot of athletes, a lot of their player development staff members who I'm still in contact with and work with. Unfortunately, I can't talk about who I worked with just because of disclosure.
No problem.
But you know, we've been very fortunate to work with some great people in there.
Yeah.
Some people on their media team as well too. So it's just kind of putting yourself in that network. And I think the thing is what happens with us is we limit our own minds. We are our greatest limit, right? Like if I told myself like, yo, there's no way in hell someone from like that organization or that group would work with me. Well, you're just beating yourself.
Yeah.
You got to take that shot. What's really nice is even from that event, I'm actually working with someone now on a $3 million gas station deal, which are in the process of firming up. So you could see that kind of just putting yourself out there is great. Now, one thing I tell people is when you go there, don't do what everyone else does. Like, so I look at it as like realtors are zebras. So what that means is zebras from afar they all look the same. But when you go up, you can actually see their stripes are different. You know what I mean? Like they're actually different. So how are your stripes different? You'll never hear me, like we met at an event and you'll never hear me just go like, hey man, like I sell real estate. Like why don't you buy a house with me? Like here's my card. Oh, and if you buy in the next month, I'll give you $1,000 back. Like,
but you did, man. That's what you said.
No, and you got footage of it too. Right? No, I'm kidding. But no, man, like you know, you get my point. Like don't go there. And I think the one thing that worked well with me is I try to build relationships, genuine relationships. And, you know, there's so many things you could build common ground on, whether it's talking about sports or politics or music or real estate investing, whatever, gold, crypto, or whatever. You can talk about a million things. Yeah. You build that relationship and the business comes automatically.
Yeah. Now, how soon? Because a lot of people would get worried. Oh my gosh, I'm spending $2,000 on this ticket. You know, this has to pay off next week. Like, right? And sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. And it's crazy because a lot of the things and a lot of the relationships that I've made took years to pay off.
That's right.
And the thing is, when I approached them, I wasn't looking at them expecting them to pay off. I was just looking to make a new friend.
That's right.
And I'm curious, how long was that time period before something actually happened after that event?
I'll tell you one, man. This is a funny story. Like, not even that event. So like one time my friend invited me to his house for like a little Christmas dinner. It was me, his family, and like another friend's family. I was trying to flop on the guy. It was freezing. Wow. I was like, yo, I'm not going to come. Like, oh, sure, whatever. He's like, no. Like, yo, bro, you said you're coming. You got to come. So I'm like, all right. And like, I remember I ran to the bay and like bought some gifts for the kids. Go to the house. I start shooting the shit with his friend. That guy actually started looking at houses with me the next week, and we bought it. I got him a house within 2 weweeks. Wow. If I didn't go to that dinner, I would have lost out on like $20K.
That's crazy,
right? That's one of the quickest ROI I've seen. The thing is, when you go about networking and relationship building, it's very hard to ROI, especially when you're ROIing against your time. It's very tough. It's very tough. Because I've also built a lot of connections outside of my real estate business as well too. So what I could actually do for you is open other opportunities as well too, other sources of networks for you. Right. And we talked about that, how like having different streams of income is also very lucrative as well too.
100%.
I'd say on average it takes 6 to 12 months. If you had to ask me to quantify it, it takes 6 to 12 months because you kind of ease them into it. Then they build that trust with you and the confidence. You need to remember, every single person who talks to you, they know 10 of the realtors. Every single person who talks to you knows 10 other videographers or photographers.
100%.
Right? So it takes that time to build that, and they get comfortable with you to the point where they're willing to scream your name out on Young Street as the best like photographer, videographer. Like, you got to get to that. It just takes time. Right?
So are you, I think you mentioned ROI.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's like comes from, you know, one place is cash flow.
Right.
And different streams of income.
Yeah.
Where are some of your different streams of relationships? You know,
that's a good question. So you're asking me like, sorry, just so I understand.
Yeah,
clearly.
like where are you getting? What types of pockets are you, leveraging for relationships these days? The podcast for me is one of them.
Right.
Right. Like I get a ton of new friends.
Yeah.
From the podcast. Leads to all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, you had courtside seats.
Yeah.
That's probably one of them.
Yeah.
Right. Like what are some other places that you make new friends?
I'd say one thing that a lot of people actually very simple. If you want one pro tip from me, join sports leagues.
Okay.
You'll meet a lot of people.
Yeah.
Go play baseball, go play dodgeball or like some little beach volleyball or whatever.
Yeah.
Get, hey man, even you could do something a little funky like underwater hockey, like whatever. Like that's like the easiest way. Like join clubs, join groups. I've joined a lot of groups, networking groups. Like there's one called CTCC. Okay. It's the Tamil Chamber Commerce Group. I've joined that just out of pure just interest in my friends going. Yeah. But like a lot of these groups, you go there, you start meeting a lot of people. Something like a podcast is great. Raptors courtside, like that's been amazing for me. We have Leafs tickets as well too. So just meeting people there.
And is that why you bought that?
No, not at all, man. I'm just unfortunately a Leafs fan. Yeah. So that also explains the hair loss as well too.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll do better. But no, I mean, I made it into that. I do leverage it for that. I think it's also really neat when you can take your clients out or your partners out and spend some time with them in a very nice event like this, like a Raptors game or a Leafs game. But when you go to a Leafs game, it's up to you to try to talk to everyone and make friends with them. Like that was something that I do and I get outside of my comfort zone and do.
Yeah.
There's so many times I'll be sitting and then I'll tell them I'm in real estate and talk to them, and then they'll give me their contacts because their daughter wants to buy a house in Thornhill or like they want to sell in like 10 years.
Yeah.
But it's like, then the next step is actually going into your systems and setting up things to be like, hey, these people want to sell in 10 years. I'm going to follow up with them in a year or in a few months. Like that's the other half of the battle that a lot of people don't do.
Yeah.
Right. And I think another good stream for me has been music as well too. I've met a lot of people through that who they gain trust and then they come over here.
Yeah.
Of course, social media, everyone's on social media these days.
Yeah.
That works well. But then for me, now that I'm on the broker side and having agents join my team, I think doing I do a lot of seminars for realtors where we give back and I just teach them systems and things like that. And I think that realtor to realtor networking is huge.
Yeah, really?
It's
a lot
huge.
of people would look at that as like, direct competition.
Not at all, man. Not at all. Like, another guy I'll shout out, it's like Dave Hutch. He's a really popular realtor. Guys in downtown. We've connected so many times. He's come and actually spoken to my team before.
Cool.
Even he said on one of his podcasts, and I agree with it, is realtor to realtor connection is huge because if I have a great connection with you and you're in Belleville, for an example, you have a listing in Scarborough or in downtown or in Toronto, you call me because you don't want to take on that listing. Now, when I have a client who wants to buy in Belleville, and they want an investment property there, I'm going to hit them up. So realtor to realtor connection is huge.
Yeah.
And one other thing is, it's in real estate as a realtor, but I'm sure it's in a lot of businesses. The realtors that actually are consistent and do a lot of transactions, there's actually a very few amount of us, especially when you break it down by like region. You kind of know like the realtors that are going to keep coming up over and over again.
Yeah.
Keeping on good terms with them, it's going to be beneficial for everyone.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. There's no need to compete, man. There's a lot of homes to sell, and there's a lot more homes coming.
Dude, it's crazy when you look at it. Like, sure, there's 70 or 90,000 or whatever realtors in the GTA. Yeah. You could say only 20% of them are actually doing damage. When you look at a condo, right, it's got like 400 units in it. Yeah. Right. Bro, there's like how many people are there? Yeah. For the number of realtors there are, it's crazy when you really look at it in comparison, right? The same thing with videographers and photographers and media professionals. Right. Like I was having this conversation, I'm like, dude, there's like 40 of us, or maybe like a couple hundred, right? If you're really looking across different industries, but like for servicing certain industries, like there's really only so many.
That's right.
Right. So if you were to take it down by like asset class, like who's really doing condos, who's really doing single family homes in this pocket, in this area at this time, right? It's like there's so many. Like literally, like competition is all friendly. It's like playing in a sports league, man. It's really cool.
That's it.
So you transition now from being a realtor to now being a broker.
That's right. So I focus. So now we have a Hillside Realty, who's been doing great, growing team. We initially started out with 4 agents. Now we're at unofficially going to be at over 10. Okay. And the funny thing was, we've only started really aggressively hiring in the last 2 months. We actually brought in 3 new realtors in the last 2 months.
Congrats.
So we're going to be growing. We're looking to grow pretty quick. I think that's a great sign for us because there's a lot of, we see real estate professionals kind of declining or having a hard time growing in this market. We're in the opposite trend. Yeah. So that's a huge positive trend for us. A lot of realtors are reaching out to us being like, hey, like I think this would be a great place for me. So we're fortunate to be in a position where like I'm able to choose who I want to bring on which is very fortunate.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, like a lot of my day now is servicing my agents, making sure that they're moving and they're getting deals done. I still work on certain deals depending on the deal size or the client, if they worked with me in the past. But right now we're very focused on that, and we have a huge focus in Scarborough and Durham. We also have downtown Toronto, so we have 2 agents who work in downtown Toronto. And then we're also investing very heavily and rapidly going in the pre-construction space.
What made you want to become a realtor and not just, or sorry, what made you want to become a broker and not just a realtor?
Because I love teaching people. That was, and like, if you ask me, like, that's the most rewarding part. Like, I started doing these seminars and even my weekly calls with my teams. Like, I get so passionate. You could ask my agents. Like, I'll start like getting really passionate and like, I'm really dramatic when I teach. Probably a lot more than I need to be. But
but you taught violin, right? So that kind of makes sense.
So the sales coaching just came really naturally to me.
Yeah.
And when I look at like every realtor, it's like I'm not gonna say it's solving a puzzle. Like everyone's their own puzzle, or it's something you kind of always improve over the years too. But like I would start looking at them, and I found a thrill in being like, okay, like here's the things that you're doing wrong. Here's things I would change. Here's what we're gonna do to help you, and that feeling of taking them from like, doing 20K a year to like 150K or 120K or 200 or whatever they end up hitting.
Yeah.
It's very rewarding.
100%.
It's very rewarding. And I think, with Hillside, we built a great system on loyalty and dedication and respect and this willingness to collaborate. Like we have a great culture and, our agents love it here.
How did you know you were ready to become a broker?
I didn't, man. I told you, man, I jumped 3 feet deep into everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was funny. I went from Remax to Bay Street.
Okay.
So my broker of record, Vicky, she said, look, like you're gonna be really busy. I think you should get a lease agent to do your leases for you, or maybe even someone on the buying side. And I said, well, why don't I just get a few agents under me? She's like, yeah, you know what? You could start a team, but like here's the pros and cons, and we had a long discussion about it. So I said, all right, screw it. So when I started the team, it was actually called the Mithuran Manogaran real estate team. I didn't want it to be that. I just
can't fit on a sign, bro.
It can, man. I know, and I don't want to go like Mitch or Mitz or whatever, something like that. I'm keeping my full name, but it was funny because I wanted to think of a name. It just took me 6 months to get the name that I was comfortable with. But it was not just about the size of my name. It was also, no one wants to work for someone else.
100%.
That's my belief.
Yeah, I don't want to put your name on my jersey. Like, it doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Right? So I wanted a brand that everyone believes in with the core concepts, right? And our formula is simple, but it works well.
Okay. And the formula is Y equals MX plus B? Or?
I can't say that, man. Then everyone's going to copy me. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I mean, like, our pillars are trust, transparency.
Okay.
Data-driven, results-oriented.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many people that say that, but it's just like, there's so many people that say a burger is a bun, a patty, some veggies, some sauce, and another bun, right? Yeah. It is all going to taste different. Yeah. So I'm not going to ask you what's in the sauce, but just know that the sauce is there.
Of course. The sauce is the most important part, man.
Yeah, yeah.
But no, and I think like that, and it's good because it's good that you say that, because a lot of people, when they have their principles, they don't actually double click into it properly. I think that's where you got to get down.
Yeah.
And I think one thing with our team that works really well is we change with the market, and I think that's like where we make change as needed. A great example, something that did really well for us was once we saw interest rates go up, a lot of people want to liquidate their asset, but they didn't have. And now it's not like the market were 2 years ago. Anything sells. You got to stage. You got to make sure the house look good. Everything a lot of properties are getting sold conditional today, right? So you got to really do your job to get property sold today. So we were actually offering our clients $25,000. We have an interest-free loan program to renovate your home, because a lot of clients don't have the money to renovate, but the renovation funds would really help them. Yeah. So what we do is we give you up to $25,000 to renovate your home. You get and it's like mainly like cosmetic stuff. Yeah. You get the rentals done. And then once you sell your property from your closing, you're going to pay us back interest-free, right? And that program did really well for us and actually helped us get a lot of listings. Nice. But that's the competitive advantage, we give our team and our clients to win in this market. Wow. Right. And
I bet having your, investment and renovation background,
absolutely
really helps.
Yeah. Right. And that program's not as easy to sound. Like even like, one of the challenges like betting on contractors. Sometimes our clients will come with a random contractor. We get scared because it's our money that's going into it. Yeah. Right. So a lot of times we try to make them work with our vetted and recommended contractors. But obviously there's been situations where they've also brought forward some great contractors. We just have to vet them out. And, there's a lot of nuances with that program that we really had to iron out and make it work.
Cool. Now, it seems like you've had a ton of experiences, like unique, like very unique, especially from like all the violin to then becoming a realtor, investor, broker, right? It sounds like you've met a lot of cool characters along the way.
Yep.
You know, I know you mentioned one that really stuck out with you.
Yep.
Even like offline before this conversation, I would love for you to dive into that story a little bit and how their perspective, and just on like how they operate their lives really impacted you. No, and it specifically, it was the 64% of like an area commercial.
Right.
When you're 18.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I'd love to hear that story.
Yeah, for sure, man. So I just blanked on the story for a second, but
Yeah,
no, all
it's
good.
okay.
So I was mentioning to you offline. So my dad was a taxi cab driver his whole life, and then for the last 10 years before he retired, he was in the limousine business. So one of his clients, he actually works in they own a particular hotel. I'm not going to mention it, but in downtown Toronto, billionaires. So it was the son running it, who was in his 50s, and he told my dad one day, like, my father's coming. He's coming from PEI. Can you go pick him up at the Butterville airport? So, and when he mentioned that, he said, yeah, like my dad, like, is really successful with real estate. He owns 64% or like something like ridiculous like that of all commercial properties in like PEI. So they own a good chunk of PEI essentially.
Crazy.
Yeah. Insane. So I told my dad, I'm like, can I tag along? Like, let me tag along. And my dad's like, all right, whatever, just come. 18-year-old me tags along, and I'm expecting like, you know, like a richer, I'm expecting like a Rolex watch, bare minimum, you know, like all Gucci'd up, or like Versace, like you know, like 18-year-old me is like expecting this like particular image of a guy. Guy comes out in the most like basic shirt, tucked into like jeans that he probably bought like 40 years ago, and he's bringing this one briefcase, and I swear to God, it must have been like the briefcase like he got when he was a kid, like 60 years ago, right? It looked like it was like one kick away from just like shattering. And I remember when he came in, like the guy got in the car. He was like, he must have been in the 70s or 80s at the time. Super simple, super humble. And I think he reached a point where money didn't mean much to him, or materialistic things didn't. But I think what that changed about my perspective is that, you know, there's bigger things to life than money. There is, and I think a lot of people don't realize that until you hit a certain point in your life, whether it's financially or age or health or whatever it is. You know, it's unfortunate that a lot of people have to have like a serious illness for them to realize that health is important, and that there's bigger things to life than fighting people and arguing and money and scamming or whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I remember this particular gentleman. My dad's like, "Do you want to go to Starbucks and coffee?" He's like, "No, Starbucks. No, that's too expensive. We'll go to like Tim's or like Donald's." I'm like, "Wow, my God, you're worth like so much money, and you don't even Starbucks is too expensive. Like, good God, you could probably buy like 5 of them if you wanted to." Yeah. You know what I mean? But I think the other thing he really taught me is that life is simple. We complicate it. And to tie it back to your podcast, making 100K is simple. Making 100K a month is simple. Making 100K a day is simple now. Do I make 100K every single day? No. But it's simple. And it just, I think what happens a lot of times with us as humans is we overcomplicate things.
Agreed.
Right? That kid lives a very simple life. Right?
How do you think that changed you? You know, and it's probably one of those things that every time you hit a new checkpoint or across a goal off the list, you reflect on it, and it has a different meaning to it. It
taught me that the most important thing in life is peace, happiness, and love. You could have all the money you want, man. You could have all the money you want. You could put all the Instagram posts about you with your fancy cars, but if you ain't happy,
what does it all mean?
This is all just you know, you're just doing this to make yourself feel better. Yeah. You got to find peace and happiness in you. And that guy had that. He was super happy. He didn't care. He's like, I don't care, man. You know, probably people on the road looked at him and stared at him and thought he was homeless or like some random stranger. Yeah. Right? They didn't know this guy owns like a multi-billion-dollar like, you know, net worth of real estate. Super simple dude.
When are you happiest these days?
When I'm with my loved ones. When I'm with my loved ones. I think that's the, you know, I'm fortunate where I've reached a point where I realize money is not everything. And I'm not saying that because I've hit a certain financial goal, but I think I've reached that maturity, that mindset. That's what I'm trying to get to. Yeah. Money means nothing. Right? It's a tool. It comes, it goes. It's important to survive. You need it. So like, sorry, I take back the part that it's nothing. Yeah. But I don't think money determines happiness. 100%. I see like a lot of like couples or like, you know, friends or people who are like, yeah, like I'm dating this girl, I'm dating this guy, they're loaded. They could lose it all tomorrow. They go put it all on black in a casino, they could lose it tomorrow. Yeah. You know what I mean? Black usually hits, by the way.
Every time,
man. Every time.
You hear that? So if you're looking for investment advice, go to the casino, bet it all on black.
I do not solicit this. I'm kidding. But but you know what, man? Like I think that's what it is, right? Like not to get into like, not to be like super deep or go off topic, but I think like that happiness and the peace, and I find that in my loved ones, in enjoying the small things in life. I have a 2.5-year-old niece. I love spending time with her. We'll fool around, we'll play. Like I was with her yesterday. I didn't even look at my phone all day. Right. And I think those are the best moments of life, man. Finding happiness in the little things.
100%. Well, Mithuran, man, thank you so much for sharing your perspective.
Absolutely.
Before we rock out of here, what types of things can the audience help you with? If you had one ask of them, what would you ask?
So buy all your houses with me? No, I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. Damn, that's deep, man. You're hitting me with the deep stuff.
Really? Oh, okay. Well,
one thing that I could ask them to help me out with.
Yeah, sure. Like you've shared your perspective and your time with us, a bit of your story and your background. So what, if we could do anything for you, man, what could we help with? Yeah,
for sure, man. I mean, on a very personal note, like go check us out at Hillside Realty. That'd be great if you guys could check us out. If anyone is genuinely looking for any real estate advice in the Toronto or Durham area, pre-construction, hit me up. I'd love to chat with anyone and sit down and it's not about buying today, but if you're looking to buy in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, even, I'd love to talk with you. But on a very personal note, I would just say, like, we live in a day and age today where there's a lot more hate than there needs to be. There's not enough love. And I think, we go on social media and everyone portrays this perfect life they're living and whatever, but just know that there's no need to compete, right? My most favorite quote is, success is not about how you're doing versus the person beside you or another guy on social media. Success is about where you were yesterday and who you are today. And for me, I came to that realization. I know where I came from and where my family struggled and where we are today, and I'm really happy with where I am today. Right? And I think if there's one thing I'd leave you all with is, if one thing I could ask is spread positivity, right? There's no need to compete, learn from each other, and just spread love, man. That's it. No need to hate. Everyone's just trying to make it, right?
Well, we appreciate you, Mithuran. Thank you so much. Where can they all follow you?
You guys can follow me at Mithuran_real estate. And then Hillside Real Estate as well too. So make sure to check us out there.
Sounds good, man. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you, bro.
Spending the time.
Thanks, man.
Be great. See you on the next one. Peace.
I hope you enjoyed this episode just as much as I did. And if you did like it, I would love for you to subscribe or follow the show on whichever platform you're listening or watching this on. Once again, I'm your host, Javon.ca, and I can't wait to introduce you to our next guest on our next episode. So we'll see you on the next one. Peace.